Traumatic brain injury by Victoria Perez. According to the U.S. Department of Education, traumatic brain injury is an acquired injury to the brain caused by an external physical force resulting in total or partial functional disability or psychosocial impairment, or both, that adversely affects a child's educational performance. This type of injury can be an open or closed head injury. Some impairments caused by traumatic brain injury include cognitive functioning, attention, sensory, perceptual, motor abilities, impulsivity, information processing, psychosocial behaviors, and speech. Traumatic brain injury can be due to concussions or head injuries, typically from accidents or child abuse. It is not always visible. Traumatic brain injury does not apply to congenital or degeneration brain injuries or injuries induced by birth traumas. The frontal lobe, parietal lobe, temporal lobe, brainstem, occipital lobe, and cerebellum are all parts of the brain that may be affected by traumatic brain injury. The cerebellum receives information to regulate motor and voluntary movements. It receives information from sensory systems, spinal cord, and other brain parts. The cerebellum is in charge with posture, balance, coordination, speech, and muscular activity. Some signs and symptoms of damage to the cerebellum include loss of coordination, inability to judge distance, inability to perform rapid altering movements, weak muscles, slurred speech, staggering, and tendency of falling. The frontal lobe is involved in motor function, problem solving, memory, impulsivity, social and sexual behavior. Some signs and symptoms of damage to the frontal lobe include sudden changes in a behavior such as aggression, memory loss, declining intelligence, inability to understand social cues, loss of empathetic reasoning, impaired language skills, and reduced motor skills and spatial reasoning. The occipital lobe is primarily responsible for visual processing. Some signs and symptoms of damage to this lobe include memory loss, lack of rational thinking, headaches, visual loss, dizziness, anger, and change in sleep patterns. The parietal lobe is responsible for processing information about taste, temperature, touch, and movement. Signs and symptoms of damage to the parietal lobe include confusion of right and left, difficulty with writing and with math, causing language disorders, neglecting body, causing effects on self-care. This could include dressing, also difficulty constructing or drawing. The brainstem is responsible for the messages sent between the brain to the rest of the body. Also, the brainstem controls basic body functions. Some of these functions could include breathing, swallowing, heart rate, sleep, consciousness, and blood pressure. Some signs and symptoms of damage to the brainstem include difficulties with sense of smell and taste, trouble swallowing, dizziness, hearing loss, tinnitus, which is a ringing in the ear, and loss of sensation. The temporal lobe is responsible for processing memories and integrating the memories with the sensations. This lobe is also involved in hearing. Some signs and symptoms of damage to the temporal lobe include disturbance in auditory sensation and perception, selective attention of auditory and visual input, and language comprehension. Also, some signs and symptoms of damage to the temporal lobe include altered sexual behavior, altered personality, and long-term memory impairments. Some classroom accommodations for students with traumatic brain injury can include additional time to complete assignments. This can also be additional time to take tests or quizzes. Another one is allowing students to record lectures so they can refer back to when studying or completing homework or any assignments. Also, allowing students to test in a quiet and individual environment. Another accommodation can be preferential seating for the student. Typically, this would be in the front of the classroom where the student can focus best. Also, providing both written and verbal instructions for each activity and assignment. And lastly, to break down complex tasks for the student. So, this could be done through a task analysis. This additional link offers more on traumatic brain injury in students in the classroom. Hope you enjoy.